So, I'm really happy also to present our third speaker on this panel, Serge Bouchardon, whom most of you, I think, already know. He's professor at Sorbonne University of Technology of Compiègne, near Paris, and he's director of the COSTECH laboratory. His research focuses on digital creation and digital writing, in particular digital literature. Though I would like to hear what distinction you make between digital creation, digital writing, and digital literature. We'll have to come back to that. He's also an author and experimenter, and he's interested in the way gestures can contribute to the construction of meaning. His creations were exhibited in several venues in Europe and America, and they were selected in various online reviews: Blue Orange, Hyperhits, Spring On, The New River. And the creation of Loss of Grasp won the New Media Writing Prize in 2011. So I have a link to his research profile if you'd like to find out. But if you just Google Serge Bouchardon, you'll also find his profile. So thank you very much, Serge, for coming over and talking to us.
Thank you, Erika, for organizing this conference. Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here. I'm very honored to be the only male speaker today. So, as you said, in 2010, I published online a piece of electronic or digital literature, Déprise, and progressively the piece has been translated in English, Italian, Spanish, and last year in Portuguese. And every translation brought changes to the original version in French, but also to other versions. I will show you the first three scenes, and I will let you discover the last three. It's online, so you type déprise.fr or lossofgrasp.com. So I will show the version in English, and then I will comment after this.
Did you connect the sound?
Welcome. Press the hash key. Congratulations.
So a sentence appears. It's interactive, so if I do nothing, nothing will appear on screen. But it's very simple. I just have to roll over the sentence, and the next sentence appears. The whole universe belongs to me, I thought. I have the choice. I control my destiny. And then obviously another action is expected with the mouse pointer. I can click. I am the king of the world. I will become what I want. I followed my own path. I browsed beautiful landscapes. I even went to Lancaster. But for a while, I have had doubts. How can I have grasp on what happens to me? Everything escapes me, and I just lost the mouse pointer. But I can continue to roll over the sentences without it. Slips through my fingers, objects, people. I feel I've lost control. For some time now, I expect but one thing. What comes next?
Hello. If you want the meeting in 10 years, press 1. In 3 hours, press 2. Now, press 3. It's time for the meeting.
I press 3. Second scene. But the meeting was trumped. I only realized it later. The woman in front of me seemed so perfect, I was flabbergasted. I couldn't say anything current.
Shall we go for a walk?
And here I have some alterations, you can see.
Have you lived around here for a long time? What do you do for a living? I feel we have a lot in common. Do you come here often? You're very pretty.
I was distraught. I had to ask questions to reveal her. And then when I roll over with my mouse here, my questions are constitutive elements of the portrait of the woman. With Without my being aware of it, this stranger became my wife. We shared everything, but I never got to truly know her. Today I still wonder, who is following whom? When I love her, she loses me. So 13, 20 years have gone by since we first met. This morning I'm reading a note she left me. I'm at a loss. I don't know what to make of it. Love poem or breakup note. And if I put my mouse pointer to the right, I can listen to Carmel. And obviously the text that appears here is more a love note. From the first day I wonder how you can believe that I don't want to stay with you, I love you! And now, if I go to the left, the lines are the same, but the order is just the reversed. My love has disappeared. Indifference is more vivid than ever. The charm of our encounter has dissolved. So there's double interpretation. The reader can experiment it with his own or her own gestures. And the gesture here contributes to the construction of meaning. And we can listen here to Carmen reverse. I know it's a shock for you. Okay, I will not go further. So I will. And now I will comment. So there are three last scenes that you can discover online. So the questions I want to raise, I have more questions than answers. What is specific to the translation of digital or electronic literature? What does translating teach us about digital literature and about the digital? And maybe, what does digital literature teach us about translating? These are not modest questions. So, to try to answer these questions, I asked the different translators for feedback on the translation process. So 5 languages, 4 translation. Valérie Bouchardon, I asked my wife for the English version. Giovanna Di Rosario for the Italian version. Marta Asuncion Alonso for the Spanish version. Diogo Marquez for the Portuguese version. And Noelia Meza, who is in this room, who analyzed loss of grasp, déprise in her doctoral thesis, and who shared her thoughts about translation. Thank you, Noelia. So I'm going to address 6 points very rapidly. Collaborations. So depending on the translator, there were various forms of collaboration between the dialogue in real life with the translator, alias my wife for the English version, and the dialogue through emails with the translator I had never met for the Spanish version. So which mode of communication is most appropriate? So we may think that this question applies to other forms of translation as well. Nevertheless, I see a link with the second point, the code, pointed out by Noelia Meza. Noelia speaks of the distance between the translator and the author and the complexity of programming the text in different languages. The role of the manipulation of the code to produce similar literary effects in the different versions of Déprise. And actually, that's the XML file, so the code file with which some translators worked. So this is for the second scene, le rendezvous, the meeting, and so you can translate here. This is the English version, and here you have the alterations. You remember the alterations? Have you lived around here for a long time? Have you used the wrong ear for a long time? So it's quite easy. But some translators, for instance the Spanish translator, she preferred to work with a word processing file, a Word file, and she asked me for the voice of the woman to have both the French version and the English version. So actually, the closer the collaboration was with the translator, the more likely the translator chose to work directly with the code file. So Valerie says, I prefer to work with the code file. I need to see the coding context to better understand the process between the code and what appears on screen. So this raises the question of the inherent opacity of any computer program, the question of the mediation of computation between the code and the forms that appear on screen. But what technical skills for the translator of digital literature? And here I want to listen to Giovanna for the Italian version. She says, I want to point out the new instrument the translator of electronic literature needs to be familiar with in order to translate it, as well as the author of electronic literature needs to be familiar with the new digital writing medium. Also, the translator has to learn and acquire, at least to a certain extent, these competencies for both understanding what she is translating and for practically translating it. The role of the translator in the digital era is changing. Not only does she need to translate words, but also images and movements, and sometimes she's also required to have the technical competence to do it. So there are computer skills and computer tools. Giovanna again. There is also a very basic technical problem to keep in mind. In order to translate digital literature, you need several technical tools. Today, it's already simpler, but I remember in 2010, when I was at my parents' house in the Tuscany countryside during Christmas holidays, I didn't have good internet connection. So I did not really know what your text was doing. It's also interesting here to talk about what the text does. Not easy to translate like that. And that's not part of translation skills, but it's important because I have to see how the text unfolds to be able to translate and recreate its rhetoric and aesthetics. If to translate a text, normally one needs a good dictionary, maybe 2 or 3. Here, a translator also needs other tools and other competencies. And Diogo, for the Portuguese version, I needed to find 3 people to recite the text and to have the instrument to record it. This leads me to the specificities of digital literature. And I will quote Noelia again. How is the interplay of semiotic resources, words, images, audio, gestures, mediated with translation practices? Can we really achieve an intersemiotic cohesion in the translation of elite works? And Diogo asks, should digital literary works of art be translated by non-specialists in digital literature? Sounds and voices. Giovanna. As soon as we recorded the audio, I realized that my friend's cousin had a very strong regional accent with the other 2 voices, while the other 2 voices were almost neutral. No particularly accent could be easily identified. The teenager, the 4th scene that you have not seen. The teenager had a strong accent of my city dialect Aretino. What to do? Looking for someone else or keeping him and his accent? At the end, we decided that the strong accent could give even more sense of reality to the text. What Desprez was telling could happen everywhere and anywhere. The strong accent located it in a certain place, very identifiable for Italian speakers. So what shall be privilege? Meaning or sound? Having voices in the piece gives a new dimension to this traditional question. Marta for the Spanish version. When I translated Desprez, I worked on the alterations in order to obtain the same effects of surprise as in French. For that, I played quite freely on phonetics. I consider this aspect to be the main challenge of any translation. This seems to me to be a major importance in the case of a digital piece, directly appealing to all the senses of the reader. And this is the same reasoning by Giovanna for for the alterations. Another complicated part was what you call the alteration. I left some of the meanings, especially in the main sentences, but I played with the sound of the words in the alteration, like you did in the French version. So the meaning of some sentences is totally different. Animations and gestures. And Noelia asks, are the figures of manipulation translated, retranslated, adapted in all the languages? So what I call figures of manipulation, meaning gestural manipulation, they are figures which rely on a gap between the reader's expectations while manipulating the text and the result on screen. So should the animations and gestures be somehow translated? And there is here a very interesting thought by Giovanna about visible and invisible in digital literature. The first concern for me has always been to reproduce the movements of the original text in my translation. It's not just a linguistic problem, of course. I think of Desprez and all its rhetorical figures, so well analyzed by Noelia in her thesis. I still wonder if I really managed to render them all in Italian. My aim was not to lose the invisible digital text, and I'm not thinking in this case about the code, but about what the code allows the writer and the reader to do. In a certain sense, I find that the linguistic translation is visible. One can miss the connotation of a word or its nuances, yet easily read the original text to at least check the original word. In digital literature, things get more complicated. Because obviously one can translate the linguistic text correctly, and at the same time, part of the meaning of the work that is also created by other movements, by manipulations, and so on, can get lost. Retranslation. Marta, when I did the Spanish translation, the Portuguese version was not ready. It would have been useful to me. And Noelia, considering that the first translation stands as a reference, loss of grasp, the English version, how is the figure of the first translator, his knowledge, reflected in future translations? If the current translator knows the language of previous translations, will he or she be creatively influenced by them? Which will be considered the target work? Desprez or loss of grasp? Both. How do the voices of other translators interact with the current translator's voice in the process of translation? And my last point, translation as interface. This is a reflection by Diogo for the Portuguese version. It's interesting to note that the idea of transparency and translucency in digital interfaces that is being propelled by digital technology industries can be compared to the idea of transparency and translucency in the context of translation, namely when it comes to translating something that stops being exclusively discursive in order to become multimodal and involve multisensory perception. So translation can be understood as an interface between thought and languages, self and other, subject and tool, art and technology, humans and machines, or between different cognitive, symbolic, performative and linguistic regimes. And digital literature may live precisely in this in-between space, the place where the pulse of translation or the process lies, celebrating intersemiosis, transference and transformation. And my conclusion in 3 points. So we have seen that the translation is not only translinguistic, but has to take other dimensions into account. So I have worked recently on transcoding from Flash to JavaScript, and here is the new version of Desprez loss of grasp that nobody has seen so far. So I will just show the third scene and you will see the difference.
You need the sound?
No, no. Yeah, the sound will come after. It will be Karen. So here, I get the movement from right to left, from left to right, and now it's from bottom to top. Here I've got a love poem. Here it's a breakup note. Okay, so you can see the difference. And transmedia. I'm working on an app for smartphones and tablets. So I have to rethink scenes with a tactile dimension in mind, because there is no mouse pointer on smartphones. So how does the translation of code, transcoding, and the translation of media, transmedia, from PC to smartphone relate to a translation of text, translinguistic? Every time there is a new translation, it leads me to go back and make changes to the whole piece with all the translations. Walter Benjamin speaks of translation as a process of continuous transformation. And I want to make a link between translation and preservation. Regarding preservation, the added value of digital technology is not where one expects. The digital medium is not a natural preservation medium, but is on the contrary hell for preservation. But digital technology makes us enter another universe, which is a universe of reinvented and not stored memory. From an anthropological point of view, this model of memory is more valuable and more authentic than the model of printed media, which is a memory of storage, the book that one stores on a bookshelf, just like the memory that one would store in a case of one's brain. Indeed, cognitive sciences teach us that memory does not function on the model of storage and conservation. Preserving is thus permanently reinventing the content. The issue is to have an accurate and faithful invention, a reconstruction in which the changes are explicit and commented upon. And on a similar level, translation emphasizes the digital age as a move from a model of stored memory to a model of continuous reinvented memory. And from this point of view, digital literature can be regarded as a good laboratory to address translation in the digital age. And my last point, eventually, translating digital literature questions the idea of one field only of digital literature in the whole world. We can notice that hypertext fiction was mainly developed in the US and text generation in France, and that in Brazil, digital poetry particularly emphasizes intersemiotic relationships between text, image, and sound. Digital literature is based on each country's own conception of literariness, on each country's own conception of the digital medium, as well as on the relation between the two, literariness and conception of the digital medium. So the following question remains open. Is digital literature a current international field or a mere collection of cultural specificities, and how translation can deal with it? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir.